Today we're embarking on a ripper of a journey through Australia's past. From ancient Aboriginal cultures to British colonization and beyond, we're covering it all. The first Australians. Let's kick things off with the original Aussies, the Aboriginal people. These folks have been calling the sunburnt country home for a whopping 50,000 to 65,000 years. That's older than the pyramids, older than writing, heck, it's even older than sliced bread. Picture this, it's the last ice age, and a bunch of brave souls are island hopping from Southeast Asia. They land on the northern shores of a massive, unknown continent. Little did they know, they were about to become the first Australians. These early settlers were tough as nails. They spread out across the land, figuring out how to survive in everything from scorching deserts to lush rainforests. They even made it to Tasmania, which back then was still connected to the mainland by a land bridge. Here's a mind-blowing fact, at Lake Mungo in New South Wales, archaeologists found 41,000-year-old human remains suggesting early religious rituals. These folks might have been the world's first cremators. Ancient Aussie innovations. The Aboriginal people were no slouches when it came to innovation. About 46,000 years ago, they developed fire stick farming. By deliberately burning areas, they created open grasslands rich in plants and animals. It's like they invented landscape gardening on a massive scale. They also whipped up some nifty tools. We're talking stone implements, wooden javelins, and everyone's favorite curved comeback kid, the boomerang. These beauties have been around for at least 10,000 years. Talk about a lasting design. Climate roller coaster. Life wasn't always a walk in the park. The climate went through some major mood swings. Around 30,000 years ago, things got chilly and dry. Sea levels dropped, connecting Tasmania and New Guinea to the mainland. Australia was like a supercontinent down under. Fast forward to about 19,000 years ago, and the planet started warming up again. The rising seas created thousands of islands, including the Torres Strait Islands. The Aboriginal people rolled with the punches, adapting their way of life to the changing world. Around 2,500 years ago, a new group entered the scene, the ancestors of today's Torres Strait Islanders. These seafaring folks brought their own flavor to the mix, creating a distinct maritime culture. Think of them as the ancient Aussie version of the Vikings. Europeans crashed the party. Now, let's fast forward to when the Europeans showed up. The Dutch were the first to drop by, with Willem Janszoon landing in 1606. But it wasn't exactly a party, more like a quick day and off they went. The real game changer came in 1770 when James Cook showed up. He claimed the East Coast for Britain, setting the stage for colonization. And boy, did that shake things up. The first fleet. In 1788, the first fleet arrived with over 1,000 settlers, including 778 convicts. Talk about a tough crowd. They set up shop in Sydney Cove, and the colony of New South Wales was born. Life in the new colony was no picnic. Food was scarce, and many settlers were sick or unfit for work. But they persevered, and slowly but surely, the colony began to grow. It was like a real-life version of Survivor, but with more tea and crumpets. Rum, rebellion, and rapid growth. As free settlers arrived and convicts finished their sentences, a new society started to take shape. Farms spread out, boat building took off, and some clever folks even started sealing and whaling industries. The colony was starting to find its sea legs. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The colony had its fair share of drama, including the infamous Rum Rebellion of 1808. Imagine a bunch of soldiers overthrowing the governor over booze. It's like a pirate mutiny, but with more paperwork. Macquarie's magic touch. Things started looking up under Governor Lachlan Macquarie. He was like the Bob the Builder of colonial Australia, roads, churches, hospitals, you name it. He even sent explorers over the Blue Mountains, opening up new land for farming and grazing. Talk about thinking big. Macquarie also had a soft spot for the ex-convicts, or emancipists. He gave them opportunities and positions, which ruffled a few feathers among the free settlers. But hey, everyone deserves a fair go, right? Wool, gold, and a growing nation. As the years rolled by, the colony grew and changed. The wool industry took off like a kangaroo on a hot tin roof. By 1850, wool made up half of the colony's exports. Australia was riding on the sheep's back. Then came the gold rush of the 1850s. Suddenly, everyone and their dog was heading to the goldfields, hoping to strike it rich. The population exploded, and new towns sprang up faster than you can say Eureka, uniting the colonies. Fast forward to 1901, and Australia finally became a federation. The 6 colonies joined forces to create the Commonwealth of Australia. It was like the Avengers of the Southern Hemisphere, but with more politicians and less spandex. This new nation faced some big challenges right off the bat. They had to figure out how to govern a continent-sized country, deal with the thorny issue of immigration, and decide what kind of relationship they wanted with good old Mother England. The birth of the ANZAC spirit. The 20th century saw Australia come into its own on the world stage. From the trenches of Gallipoli to the jungles of Vietnam, Aussie diggers showed their mettle in both world wars and beyond. The ANZAC spirit was born, and it's still a big part of Australian identity today. But war wasn't just about fighting overseas. During World War II, Australia faced the threat of invasion for the first time since European settlement. The bombing of Darwin and Japanese submarines in Sydney Harbour brought the war close to home. Post-war boom. After World War II, Australia opened its doors to migrants from all over the world. The populate or perish policy saw millions of new Aussies arrive, bringing with them a smorgasbord of cultures, cuisines, and customs. It was like adding a whole new spice rack to the national kitchen. This influx of migrants helped fuel a post-war economic boom. The 1950s and 60s saw rising living standards, full employment, and the birth of the great Aussie dream, a house in the suburbs with a Hills hoist in the backyard. Social revolution. The latter half of the 20th century saw Australia grapple with its past and look to the future. The White Australia policy was finally ditched in the 1970s, and steps were taken towards reconciliation with Indigenous Australians. It wasn't always easy, but progress was made. The social upheavals of the 60s and 70s hit Australia too. From the Vietnam War protests to the women's liberation movement, Aussies were questioning the status quo and demanding change. Modern Aus, a global player. In recent decades, Australia has cemented its place as a major player in the Asia-Pacific region. From hosting the Olympics to leading peacekeeping missions, the land down under has shown it's more than just beaches and Barbies. Economically, Australia has ridden the waves of the resources boom, survived the global financial crisis, and become increasingly integrated with Asian markets. It's been a wild ride, but Aussies have shown they're pretty good at surfing economic waves. The 21st century. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Climate change, political upheavals, and global crises like the COVID-19 pandemic have all tested the nation's resilience. The devastating bushfires of 2019 to 2020 were a stark reminder of the challenges ahead. Yet, in true Aussie fashion, the country has faced these challenges with determination and a fair bit of humor. From the same-sex marriage vote to the response to the pandemic, Australia has shown it can adapt and overcome. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour of Australian history, from ancient dreamtime to the modern day. Thanks for joining me on this historical adventure. If you enjoyed this trip through time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And hey, let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like us to explore.